Okay, I would like to invite us to start, and I want to start just by just placing this conversation. Initially, I had planned to place it in the kind of context that we've had during the past year, but exactly an hour and a half ago, we had a terrible escalation in Lebanon, something that we're not even, able to grab or to understand. There's been a cyber attack simultaneous on the southern suburbs in Beirut, also in Syria, as I understand, coupled with explosions and the cyber attack. I'm totally unable to explain technically how it happened. It was a hacking of pagers that Hezbollah military use, and it basically exploded in the hands of people. And they've been also, and that's like really 2 hours ago, we decided not to leave the campus now because, well, the university hospital is full of people. A couple of hours ago, right after this started, there were already 100 casualties, and also, well, we're told it's in total 1,000 casualties until now. It's not just the size of the casualty, it's the mechanism that was used, which is a little bit concerning. Thank you, Beth. That's a little bit, that's a different kind of escalation in the situation that we are going through. So, and this makes our conversation even more so important, particularly the part that some of you are going to discuss, which is feminist foreign policy in context of conflict, and how, how can it be a meaningful tool in a context of conflict. And so please bear with us for those of us who are a little bit unsettled here, because we really have no idea how this will, what would be the implication, what will happen tomorrow. So anyway, nevertheless, we continue, and we try to think about how, the privilege that we have of having these discussions and having all of you with us in the same virtual room. How can we use this for the purpose that it was meant for in the first place? So I thank you all for being with us. I'm Lina Abou-Habib, and I'm speaking with you from the campus of the American University of Beirut. So here in Beirut, I'm the director of the Asfari Institute, and I'm very grateful for our partners in co-organizing this important conversation. The Ministry of External Relations in Mexico, who I would like to recall, Mexico was the first country from Latin America to actually adopt a feminist foreign policy. I'm very thankful also to Ambassador Tickner from Colombia, who was one of the most amazing and outspoken speakers at the third ministerial conference on feminist foreign policy. Thank you, Minister Tickner, for being with us. And I want to thank Colegio de México, our co-organizer as well, and the 3 embassies of Colombia, Chile, and of course, Mexico, for being with us. And I want to thank our long-term partner INMUJERES, the National Institute of Women in Mexico, with whom also we work on, not just on feminist foreign policy, but also on centering care in everything that we do. And care is, again, another conversation altogether, and its implication in conflict. We have a brilliant panel here, panelists who are bringing different perspectives. And let me just start by saying, as we were conceptualizing this conversation, it was basically building on the amazing work that our colleagues and our friends in Mexico at the Ministry of Foreign Relations have done in organizing what was, for me, the best ministerial conference on feminist foreign policy, and hats off to Ambassador Graciela Gomez Garcia and to Ximena and INMUJERES for the splendid work that was done. And so to start this conversation, I'm starting us off with opening remarks by Ambassador Graciela Gomez, and then I will give the floor to our dear friend from INMUJERES and then from Colegio de México. So Ambassador Graciela, please, the floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum, mahaba. I'm shocked about hearing the news, and I just want to convey that our prayers are with you. And I am incredibly honored to open this forum that is so important from a region that is very close to my heart. I thank you, Lina. I thank everybody who made this event, Voices from MENA Feminist on Feminist Foreign Policies, engaging with Latin America. And I'm doubly honored because having served in the region, I have personally witnessed the power of a female leadership in the region. So I think it is about time that we start engaging in this feminist foreign policy conversation from a different perspective. And this brings us back to what we really wanted to do with Mexico and with hosting the third ministerial conference, which is bringing a different kind of approach to this very valuable tool that is feminist foreign policy. Of course, you all know the story of this. Sweden was, of course, the first country in the world that announced in December 2014 the launching of a feminist foreign policy that promotes gender equality at the international scene. Of course, one of Sweden's strengths was the involvement of representatives from various governmental agencies, civil society, and research institutions in this development. This has created a kind of reference for every other country that had followed behind. And this is part of the message I would like to stress, that it is extremely important to engage with civil society. Even though feminist foreign policies are implemented by governments, we have learned by doing that there is only one way forward, and that involves creating spaces, substantial spaces, in which the voices of civil society are heard and incorporated. As Anne Tickner describes, international politics are deeply masculine, as Western theories of international relations tend to prioritize issues arising from male experience, projecting characteristics associated with hegemonic masculinity onto state behavior. However, as we have learned, feminist foreign policy can be a very valuable way of incorporating other perspectives, of putting issues such as the role of women in international peace and security, the fight against sexual and sexist violence, promoting the empowerment, the economic independence and empowerment of women, involving more women in leadership positions, making it more visible, the enormous contribution of women to foreign policy. And as we all know, in order to be successful, feminist foreign policy also must adhere to accountability mechanisms and be transparent, encompassing clear action plans, and the involvement of civil society in its formulation and monitoring is substantial, is very important, so that we can ensure that the outcomes are achieved and that we are constantly providing a proper accountability to our societies. In the case of Mexico, we have make an extremely important effort into incorporating civil society. And I will just refer to some recent examples. And in this, we have been very lucky having followed the lead of our minister, Minister Alicia Bárcena, who is not only convinced of this, but she is a leader that has been instrumental in creating these strategic alliances with INMUJERES in Mexico, with ONU Mujeres, but also with you, with academia around the world and in Mexico, because we want to make sure that this is a public policy that is sustainable and that is plural and that is also inclusive. So for us, this dialogue with civil society started from the very beginning, from the start of the launching of feminist foreign policy. And this year, in preparation of the third ministerial conference, we're working together with all this multi-stakeholder model. We managed to create a preparatory meeting in which we call representatives from all kinds of sectors of civil society and academia, so that we could review together what we wanted to do in July with the ministerial conference, so that we can hear their voices. And I have to say we were delighted because their contribution was very rich and was very, very important, what was really at the core of the construction of our agenda. Similarly, during the summit in July, we had around 100 civil society organizations from all over the world and from Mexico sitting at the table, participating actively in all the panels, and in thus enriching our vision, our perspective, and providing very valuable feedback on the way forward. So I would say that for us, this is a great honor to be here. We know you have prepared a wonderful program, and on behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Mexico, I just want to thank everyone here. I look forward to a very enriching conversation, and I wish you all the best. Thank you again, Lina and team. Thank you.
Lina, you're muted.
Okay, this must be the cat. Thank you so much, Graciela. There are so many points that you say that resonate so loudly and so clearly right now. One of the main challenges in the region is around militarization, around conflict, around militarized societies and a militarized history. And I think often we talk about this while disconnecting it from hegemonic masculinity, which you have just mentioned. It is about militarization and the use of force and the use of weapons. And how do these weapons come here? Is all about, you know, kind of a global hegemony of masculinity and the need to harm. So I'm really happy that you have placed this as something that is, you know, that feminist foreign policies have the possibility to challenge. I was a witness of incorporating civil society at the ministerial conference in Mexico, and I remember the amazing conversations that we've had and the panel. So thank you very much. And let me just, before I give the floor to Sandra, just say that there's a serious reason, and it is intentional, why we're moving ahead with the discussion and the engagement and the collaboration of feminist foreign policy with Latin America, because of all of the linkages in terms of what does it mean, and in terms of not having double standards when it comes to visualizing, conceptualizing, and implementing feminist foreign policy. And without further ado, I want to move to Sandra Mendoza Durán from INMUJERES. First of all, congrats on Dr. Gassman's new appointment. We're very, very happy to see feminists in really critical and strategic places. Sandra, the floor is yours. You have been one of the, essential co-organizers of the conference, and we would really like to hear from you.
Thank you very much, Lina. And first of all, I would like to express my solidarity with the people of Lebanon. And on behalf of Dr. Nadine Gassman, President of the National Institute for Women of Mexico, we would like to thank your invitation as a director of the ASFARI Institute for Civil Society and Citizenship to share the results of the third ministerial conference on feminist foreign policies. We held that in Mexico, and we had the great honor to collaborate very closely with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in its organization, as you just said. And as you know, in Mexico, we have a solid national policy for gender equality. And the National Institute for Women works very closely with our Ministry of Foreign Affairs to develop and implement the feminist foreign policy of Mexico through actions aimed at transforming the realities of women, adolescents, and girls, both within and outside our country. Mexican feminist foreign policy exemplifies the virtuous collaboration between the Ministries of Foreign Affairs and the mechanisms for the advancement of women in various countries, ensuring that feminist priorities discussed internationally are integrated into the national agenda and vice versa. In the pursuit of our feminist foreign policy to reduce and eliminate gender inequalities, promote women's, adolescent, and girls' access to the rights, shift the paradigm from which we address structural gender inequalities, and move towards building a more just and prosperous society, Mexico has taken relevant action. And I would like to point out a couple of these actions, highlighting that both of them represent important areas of co-creation between government, civil society, organizations, and academia. First, the launch of the Global Alliance for Care as one of our commitments at the Generation Equality Forum. This Global Alliance has now over 230 members, including national and local governments, civil society organizations, philanthropic entities, the private sector, international organizations, professional associations, and academic and research institutions. And also to tell you, and what a relevant moment to share with you, that during these years we have developed our first action plan on United Nations Resolution 1325. And within it, we have launched the Ibero-American Network of Women Mediators, which is presided right now by Mexico, and aims to incorporate women as an essential part of peace and security processes. And where we expect that very soon we can exchange knowledge with the ASFARI Institute, as we recently had the opportunity to talk. Now, our feminist foreign policy is consequent with the diversity of women, adolescents, and girls in our region, and therefore employs an intersectional approach sensitive to the complexity of their situations, where inequalities occur, are reinforced, and are multiplied when characteristics such as gender, ethnic origin, age, disability, or belonging to a specific social group, among other factors, intersect. As you know, the region of Latin America and the Caribbean has the Regional Conference on Women, which will hold its 16th edition in Mexico City in 2025, focusing on how to transition to care societies, as defined in the Buenos Aires Commitment of 2022. This event will also coincide with the 50th anniversary of the first World Conference on Women, which also took place in Mexico City. And this is an opportunity to further position feminist foreign policies as a tool for achieving equality. And it is meant to be a forum that will bring together, again, governments, international agencies, feminist organizations, and academia, as well as the perspective of other regions, which is really important. We will have other regions participating in this regional effort. And I am also very glad to share that by that time, our national mechanism for the advancement of women will be promoted to ministerial level. Feminist foreign policies are meant to put women, girls, and adolescents in all their diversity at the center of public policy and as leaders of decision-taking. They represent an asset to prevent the regression of women's rights agendas and to push in the multilateral agenda relevant issues such as the unjust distribution of care work, the autonomies of women, and in general, the advancement of women's rights. We hope that during this event, we can keep the rich and fruitful dialogues that we started in Mexico City last July. with the Third Ministerial Conference on Foreign Feminist Policies. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandra. And I just want to circle back to what you said about the Ibero-American Network of Women Peace Builders. It was a wonderful opportunity to meet with them, to meet with the coordination in Mexico during the conference, and the discussion about how the cross-pollination with this network, and also with individuals like people we have on the panel, wonderful individuals like from Syria, Maria, and also other friends. I think there are a lot of potentials there. And we always forget also that the kickoff for the Decades on Women, actually in 1975, the first conference on women was in Mexico. And on the one hand, it's such an important moment of genesis, but it also shows this timeline and how complicated it is getting. So thank you, Sandra. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to have with us right now Dr. Ana Maria Tepichin, who's the director of the Center for Gender Studies at Colegio de México, our co-organizer and partner in this. Allow me to say that Ana Maria heads one of the oldest established, best grounded gender studies institutes in Latin America. I think it's more than 40 years old, and I do want to mention that we are working together on a number of things. One of them is co-teaching gender between MENA and Latin America. So I'm very happy, Ana Maria, that you are with us. Ana Maria will be speaking in Spanish. We will have simultaneous interpretation. So if you could go to wherever it is for the interpretation. Ana Maria, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lina. Siento mucho la situación que está pasando, Lina, y quiero decir que me siento muy conmovida por la fortaleza que demuestra Lina y todo el equipo de las FAR Institute para continuar con sus actividades, como lo es este importante foro en medio de esta terrible situación. De todo corazón, mi solidaridad con ustedes, Lina. Desde el Centro de Estudios de Género del Colegio de México agradecemos la invitación para participar en este foro sobre política exterior feminista que enlaza las voces de Medio Oriente y Norte de África con las de América Latina. Consideramos que esta colaboración es sumamente relevante, especialmente en el contexto actual, caracterizado por el aumento de movimientos que vulneran los derechos de mujeres, de niñas, de personas no binarias o de la diversidad sexogenérica. El Colegio de México efectivamente hace más 40 años, en 1983, fue una de las primeras instituciones en América Latina en abrir espacios y promover estudios de género. Desde su creación en ese año como programa interdisciplinario de estudios de la mujer, el Centro de Estudios de Género ha tenido como misión fortalecer la interdisciplinariedad y fomentar la vinculación con académicos y académicas, tanto de México como del extranjero, con distintos sectores sociales, contribuyendo así al avance de la agenda de género a través de la investigación, de la docencia y de la divulgación académica. En nuestro centro estamos comprometidas con la formación de profesionales preparados para desempeñarse en la academia y en el servicio público. A través de nuestra maestría y de nuevo doctorado en estudios de género, cuya primera promoción comenzará en agosto de 2025 y del cual estamos muy contentas, buscamos promover la colaboración internacional, consolidar redes de trabajo con organismos multilaterales y fortalecer los vínculos entre académicas, académicos del sur global y gobiernos, lo que resulta esencial tanto para la formación de nuestro estudiantado como para el desarrollo de nuestras investigaciones. Este foro constituye un espacio de gran valor para nosotras, también para el diseño de políticas públicas innovadoras y efectivas, así como para la creación de agendas de investigación que aborden problemáticas cruciales que efectivamente estén afectando a niñas, mujeres y personas de la diversidad sexual y de género. La colaboración entre funcionarias, funcionarios, organismos internacionales, sociedad civil y academia es un paso fundamental para que nosotros podamos realizar diagnósticos certeros, identificar los desafíos reales hacia la igualdad sustantiva y la erradicación de la violencia y discriminación de género. El diálogo que favorece en foros como este es un primer paso hacia la solución de estos problemas, ya que permite identificar claramente los desafíos a los que nos enfrentamos. La investigación académica proporciona conocimientos necesarios para la formulación de políticas públicas efectivas. El ánimo que impulsa la participación del Centro de Estudios de Género es así la de unirse a los esfuerzos que se están realizando ya con la finalidad de encontrar las mejores vías para implementar una política exterior feminista que coloque la equidad de género y la protección y promoción de los derechos de niñas y mujeres en el centro de las agendas. Estos esfuerzos no solo subrayan la importancia de la cooperación internacional en la promoción de la igualdad de género, sino que también resaltan el papel fundamental del vínculo entre la academia y las organizaciones de la sociedad para colaborar con los gobiernos en el diseño e implementación de políticas públicas con perspectiva de género. La intersección de feminismo, desarrollo sostenible, derechos humanos de las mujeres tiene que ser un eje central para enfrentar los desafíos globales, desafíos tan grandes como la pobreza, la migración o el cambio climático. En este contexto, las iniciativas que conjuntan diversos sectores como el presente representan plataformas cruciales para la discusión, la formación y la creación de alianzas estratégicas que avancen hacia una igualdad de género real y efectiva. Es por eso que sentimos mucho entusiasmo para participar en este foro. Deseamos que sean muchas más las contribuciones que el Centro de Estudios de Género puede hacer con los convocantes de este foro y felicitamos entonces a todas las organizaciones involucradas y esperamos que estos resultados sean productivos. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Ana Maria. And I just wanted to add here that our university, the American University of Beirut, has a collaboration with Colegio de México, which we're really, really happy with. And I know that from our part, this extends to, co-organizing the upcoming certificate, gender certificate, and I'm very happy that we are able to draw from the expertise from Latin America and vice versa. And we're looking forward also to being able to engage in comparative research between the two regions. So thank you ever so much, Ana Maria. And I just wanted to add that Ana Maria and another colleague of hers were supposed to be we had planned for them to come to Lebanon for a first visit, but unfortunately that was right after Gaza started. I'm going to take a minute just to explain how the next segment of the panel will run. The way in which we conceptualize this with Ximena and Ambassador Graciela and Sandra is that we would like those who have had really hands-on engagement in the Mexico meeting to basically share the important outcomes of the Mexico meeting. And then we have activists from the region and beyond talking about the implications for the regions, the ways in which this could be part of the region. And we had originally planned to have 3 activists from Lebanon, Palestine, and Syria to be with us. Our colleague from Syria, Rahel Beigel from a wonderful feminist organization called Kayan, which is actually in Haifa, so it's under occupation, has been asked today not to join us, and she sends her regrets. She has sent her remarks that I will be summarizing and sharing. She is personally, and I've asked her before sharing this with you, she is personally not safe, even though they are not in Gaza or in the West Bank, but there have been attacks on activists, particularly in engagement in public events. So on her behalf, I send you her regrets, and we of course understand her situation. And I will be sending her, an expression of all of our solidarity, and which I'm sure we all share. So without further ado, I want to move to Ambassador Arlene Tickner, the Ambassador at Large for Gender Issues and Global Feminist Politics, who is joining us from Colombia. Ambassador Tickner, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Lina. Just to be clear, I will speak around 5 to 8 minutes. Is that the idea? I just don't want to abuse the time. Okay. Let me first just take a moment to express my sympathies and solidarity with what is happening, not only in Lebanon, but in the entire region. I think it is, having come from the UN actually, and been the Deputy Permanent Representative of Colombia there, it has been tremendously painful and frustrating to see all of the inertia internationally around the violence that is occurring and that affects, as we know, women, girls, youth, and other vulnerable social groups to a disproportionate degree. Let me also just say, having mentioned Lina, our colleague who could not be here, the fundamental role played by women on the ground at the everyday level in maintaining some semblance of care for life, peace, and rejection of violence. I think this provides a moment of pause just to understand and give credit to these crucial roles played by women that often go unnoticed at the day-to-day level in context of conflict, foreign occupation, and aggravated violence. I believe that my role was to summarize very briefly some of the takeaways of the summit in Mexico, which I too share with Lina the opinion that it was tremendously fruitful. I had not had the opportunity to participate in the previous ones, but I found that this one was very powerful, and I have a number of takeaways that I would like to share with you. I just want to set my timer to make sure that I don't go over time, because I assume that Lina will not interrupt me. I have just 7 takeaways. I will try to be brief in working through them. And I hope not to be too repetitive of the statements that were made and the summary that was provided, but I just want to go through several, and these potentially are more personal than institutional. I think the first lesson, or first takeaway that I have, is that progress on gender-related SDGs at the UN and global commitments to gender equality, gender rights, resources for gender equality, participation are all slow and insufficient. If we look at the statistics, we know that notwithstanding important progress, we still have years, if not decades and centuries to go in order to make gender equality and gender parity a reality. And so I think this provides a moment of pause as well when we think about the upcoming General Assembly at the United Nations and the Summit of the Future, and the need to reinvigorate and reinforce our commitments to achieving all of these goals on which we are sorely behind. Second, I also would like to point out, and it was discussed at the conference, that many achievements made on gender equality and gender-related rights, including those related to bodily autonomy, combating gender-based violence, recognition of LGBTIQ+ persons and rights, also face threats and significant backsliding. I'm actually sitting in Washington, D.C., not Colombia today, and in the United States, we see tremendous reversals in the defense of these rights in a country that by way of a demonstration effect actually could potentially validate similar backsliding in other parts of the world. And I think this is also something that needs to be addressed more vigorously. Third, I think we noted at the conference, and it's been stated in much of the literature on feminist foreign policy, although feminist foreign policy means different things in diverse parts of the world, different countries. And here we could talk about the North versus the South, which I want to come back to in my last point. All feminist foreign policies, at least those that I would consider progressive and forward-looking, share a commitment to gender equality and to understanding intersectionality as it operates in terms of discrimination, inequality, violence, and whatnot, and also share the commitment to redressing gender-based forms of exclusion, discrimination, violence, and inequality. I think also something that all feminist foreign policies share, and this was brought up in the previous intervention, is a commitment and recognition of the crucial role played by different actors and organizations in civil society. I think it's important to recognize that we wouldn't even be where we are today in terms of gender equality and defending the rights of women, girls, and their diversity and other vulnerable sectors of our societies without the key roles and insistence and resistance of women and women's and feminist organizations. And as representative of a state, I think it's important to point this out and to reiterate this. I'm not going to talk about Colombia's policy, but I do want to make the point that the government that I represent is firmly committed to what I would call a participatory public policy framework, in which the recognition of the need to have the participation of different social actors, in particular those that have not been privy to the construction of public policies in different parts of our national territory, is fundamental. And we deem it fundamental precisely because actually creating genuine forms of participation and recognition of the key role of civil society is a way to create more robust and resilient public policies. And I think feminist foreign policy potentially recognizes this more forcefully and clearly than other realms of public policy. Fourth, something that I was drawn to in the conference, and that I believe the feminist foreign policies need to work more on and place greater emphasis on, is the role of masculinities in perpetuating and normalizing different forms of violence and discrimination. And by this, I mean to say that men and boys are just as important in feminist foreign policy as women and girls, both in their diversity. When we think about the fact that patriarchy is at the root of many challenges that the world faces and that it desperately needs to be dismantled, I would be hard pressed to envision a route to dismantling patriarchy without tackling head on the role of what we could call hegemonic masculinities in perpetuating and validating patriarchy as a social system that grants power disproportionately to some social actors versus others. When looking at contexts like what is happening today, very sadly in Lebanon, one would be hard pressed to understand the militarized actions of different parties to the conflict without understanding the role of masculinities and patriarchy. So I think this is a key point that feminist foreign policies need to address in a more systematic way. Fifth, I would say that a feminist, I like to describe feminism as an ethos. I tried to lay this out in the conference in Mexico, and its related principles provide a transformational toolkit, which I believe needs to be pressed more systematically by those countries that actually say that they have a feminist foreign policy. I think in this sense, more work needs to be done to connect these aspirations that we all share vis-a-vis a feminist ethos and its principles to address different global challenges and to debunk the tremendously effective disinformation and stigmas associated with feminism. And I think doing this, going back to my previous point about masculinities, pointing out that feminism isn't just about women and girls and their diversity, but actually about all of us, about devising a new way of being in and with the cosmos, if you like, and in and with each other, learning how to respect our differences and live peacefully together, both among human communities and non-humans. I believe feminism provides an important way of doing so. Finally, just thinking about the Global South, although I have tried to argue that there are underlying commonalities between those countries in the North and the South that share feminist foreign policies, undoubtedly, and this again we're seeing in the Middle East, sadly, the Global South's lived experiences and historical trajectories actually do make our feminist foreign policies and their goals potentially distinct. I think many of these goals, if we were to take a more decolonial, progressive perspective, a decolonial feminist agenda would obviously point to how these experiences are largely related to colonialism and coloniality, which indeed are highly linked to patriarchy and other forms of discrimination and oppression, such as racism. And so I think a potential contribution of the Global South is precisely to point out these differences that are the result of our own experiences with colonialism. And I think Colombia, and the country that I proudly represent, is one of those countries that is trying to lead these calls. And indeed, I will just end on this. Countries like Colombia, Chile, and Mexico, three of us in the region that have feminist foreign policies, have, I think, a strong responsibility in pointing towards kind of Global South alternative ways of thinking about and doing feminist foreign policy. And so I will end on this, and thank you very much for convening this space and for deciding to hold it, notwithstanding the difficulties that you are facing currently in Beirut and in Lebanon and in the region more generally.
Thank you, Ambassador Tickner. You've made some, first let me just talk about a little bit about connecting what you were saying, connecting with the region. It is Lebanon, it is Palestine, and of course Gaza, but well beyond Gaza. But there are also these invisible yet incredibly brutal conflicts that are taking place. And for some reason, maybe it's difficult to multitask, at least for the media, I mean, but we forget about Sudan in huge numbers. The conflict-related sexual violence, the mass rapes in Sudan, what is happening as we speak in Yemen, in Iraq, the targeting also of queer folks in countries where conflict is prevailing actually doesn't seem to stop. But I want to circle back to two important points that you have made. The linkage between feminist foreign policy and robust and resilient public policies, because I think that was maybe the mistake in some cases where it was just about foreign policies and it was just about certain foreign policies, not all of them. So that internal inward looking and the alignment is very, very important. But also circling back to what you said and what Ana Maria mentioned, the role of masculinity in perpetuating violence, whether it's state violence perpetuated by state actors or by non-state actors. And I think it's really important for all of us to keep reiterating this as a source of violence, this hegemonic masculinity. And I turn to, for this segment, to my dear friend and somebody who's worked very hard to make this of course, the ministerial conference in Mexico happened, but also discussing and framing this event. Thank you, Ximena Mariscal, for being with us. Ximena is the coordinator for feminist foreign policy also at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Mexico, but I believe you're stationed now in Chile, if I'm not mistaken. The floor is yours, Ximena.
Thank you, dear Lina. That's right, I am in Santiago de Chile right now. But first, I would like to convey all my affection and solidarity to all the people of Lebanon and the MENA region in these difficult times. I'm deeply, deeply sorry, and we really hope that more feminist policies can provide solutions for a more peaceful future, and we can work together for this. And well, first of all, I would like to thank the Asafari Institute for convening this important event around feminist foreign policy and feminist diplomacy. We have discussed this opportunity for several months now, and to have the opportunity to be here with you and to exchange experiences and good practices in creating and implementing gender perspectives in diplomacy and foreign policies is really a great success. So we firmly believe that only with close and transparent conversations, we will be able to coordinate better to advance and to reach gender equality for a better life for everyone. And I have a very short presentation that I want to share with you. I promise it's going to be short. Yes, for that slide, as we all know, feminist foreign policies have emerged as a tool to accelerate and advance human rights of women, young women and girls, and promote gender equality. And moreover, more countries are incorporating gender equality approaches into their foreign policy, and these frameworks actively encourage their participation of women in national and international decision-making processes, promoting inclusion and diversity. Currently, we know of more than 11 countries that have adopted a feminist foreign policy, and more countries have expressed their interest in incorporating feminist or gender perspective into foreign policy. And the next slide, please. And as we know, and as Ambassador Tickner just said, there is no single definition of what a feminist foreign policy is, mainly because there are many interpretations of feminism. However, we can all agree, and we have been doing this in this conversation, that incorporating feminist principles should lead us to a more inclusive, just, and peaceful society, and can be a new way to transform multilateralism. In January 2020, the Mexican Ministry of Foreign Affairs announced the adoption of a feminist foreign policy, being the first country in the Global South to adopt this perspective in its international action. And historically, as you just said, Lina, Mexico has been an essential actor in the promotion of gender equality at the international and regional levels. For example, in 1975, the first World Conference on the Status of Women was convened in Mexico City. And for Mexico, having an FFP means not only that more women should be participating in foreign policy decisions, it also implies the mainstreaming of a gender perspective in all foreign relations between countries, prioritizing the promotion of women's and girls' rights in all their diversity, and recognizing the contributions of women to diplomacy and international politics. At the multilateral level, being consistent with internal policies of equality between women and men, Mexico has always actively defended key issues for women's autonomy, such as sexual and reproductive rights, the elimination of multiple forms of discrimination, and the prevention of all forms of discrimination and violence against women. We firmly believe that FFP is an opportunity to promote multilateralism, to open spaces for dialogue, and promote cooperation with countries committed to equality. Since its adoption, and the next slide, please, and honoring Mexico's tradition in multilateral spaces, significant progress has been made in the implementation of feminist foreign policy. And I'm sure that we will have another opportunity to talk about detailed examples on what Mexico has been doing, but I will mention only some examples in the different foreign policy areas. First, one of Mexico's achievements within the framework of its feminist foreign policy is the co-presidency together with France of the Generation Equality Forum in 2021, where the Global Alliance for Care was launched. Also, within the framework of its feminist foreign policy, Mexico has adopted 2 national action plans resulting from agreements negotiated at the multilateral level. So in January 2021, Mexico adopted its first national action plan on the implementation of the 3025 resolution on women, peace, and security, just as Sandra said. And Mexico also launched the Ibero-American Network for Women's Mediator that was mentioned earlier. And in November 2022, Mexico adopted its National Action Plan on Gender and Climate Change. And we are currently working on updating this action plan and to have a new national action plan on gender, human rights, and climate change. At the bilateral level, Mexico signed 2 bilateral agreements on cooperation and promotion of FFP with Chile and Colombia, and also with Bolivia. We just created a gender subcommission to advance towards parity, eradicating gender violence, and developing policies to dismantle patriarchal structures. In the area of cooperation and foreign trade, work is being done also to include gender chapters in Mexico's trade agreement. And all these examples were mentioned and were discussed around the conference, the Ministerial Conference on Feminist Foreign Policy. So the next slide, please. So having these principles in mind, Mexico decided to host the 3rd edition of the Conference on Feminist Foreign Policy on July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And the next slide, please. And the theme for the conference was Solutions for a Better Tomorrow. And what we wanted to do with this topic is to link the discussions of the conference with the intergovernmental process of the Pact for the Future and to provide elements from a FFP perspective to impact the multilateral agenda. So we had 6 panels around the 5 topics that were being discussed for the Pact for the Future, and an additional panel, a 6th panel, around intersectionality and discrimination with all the vision from the Global South. And we had representatives from 40 countries, 13 international organizations, and around 100 national and international civil society organizations participating at the same level of the ministers for foreign relations that we had at the conference. And the next slide, please. I'm sorry. So with for each of these themes, we developed recommendations that we consider to be important for countries to follow up in order to mainstream gender perspectives in their feminist foreign policies. And the 3rd ministerial conference concluded with the presentation of a declaration that establishes the commitment to promote women's human rights instruments such as the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the importance of developing economic and social systems with a gender-responsive approach, and the importance of the role of women in conflict resolutions and international peace and security. And the next slide, please. So we had a document, we worked on a document, on a position paper for the conference, and what we are doing right now is to incorporate recommendations to that document, and we will have this document ready by the end of the week so we can share it with all of you, and hopefully we can receive comments on this important work that we have done for the conference. So I'm sorry. And the next slide, the most important thing for us is, what does this conference and its results mean for the future of feminist foreign policy? So as for the expected results of the conference, we believe that the conference was successful in strengthening international cooperation to respond effectively to new threats and opportunities with a feminist perspective. And we also advanced in the institutionalization of FFP at the UN system and at national levels. And we were also successful in mainstreaming gender in all the conversations relating to high-level debates around the Pact of the Future. So to share these conclusions of the conference, Mexico, together with Spain and the FFP Plus group of the United Nations in New York, will hold a side event on the margins of the Summit of the Future next week in New York. And the next slide, please. So we, as I said, we are updating this working document of the conference, and we will share it with you for your comments. And we believe that we have all the conclusions and the recommendations for each of the panels integrated in that document. The next conference on FFP will be held in France in 2025. And this conversation that we are having right now is really important for us And we feel that we need to discuss more how to multiply the effects of FFP conferences and how to coordinate to truly mainstream gender perspective in all challenges and solutions to global challenges together with civil society. So the conference on FFP in Mexico is definitely not the beginning nor the end of the process. It was only a step to continue building on this momentum of FFP and to find more opportunities to coordinate for an equal and more just future for everyone. So we should be debating and discussing if we need more conference on FFP or if what we need is to have gender perspective really mainstream in all the topics and all the global challenges that are happening around us. So we are really excited to hear what you all have to say, and hopefully we can keep on having this conversation in the near future. And thank you very much, Lina.
Thank you, Ximena. And I think you made some really important points, and I want to retain just a couple. First, what is important and striking for me, but also for us, and I think this is something that our next panel of activists will talk about, is how do we connect all the mechanisms together? How can feminist foreign policy be that link between everything? And I think the last question you asked, which is really an interesting point for debate leading to Paris, is which way do we go? Do we continue with feminist foreign policy specific conferences, or how do we make sure that this is part of every conversation? And we're going to come back to this. So thank you so much, Ximena. And again, thank you for everything you've done to make this conversation happen and to bring it to the MENA region. I'm really happy to have our my wonderful friends here from civil society. My colleague here in Beirut just told me that I made a mistake when I spoke about our colleague who's not with us, Rafah. Rafah is Palestinian, actually. It seems that I mentioned that she's Syrian. She's actually from Palestine, from Haifa, from the Palestinian minorities in Haifa, who we wanted her to be with us because this is a minority that undergoes multiple layers of oppression, and they are invisible in general. Meanwhile, and I know that you will be also covering this aspect very strongly, I want to welcome Wissam. Wissam is a good friend. He's from Lebanon. He's a trans-am activist. He's been at the heart of creating the first trans-led group in Lebanon, certainly the first of two, maybe in the whole region. Wissam, thank you for being with us. Your presence is very important, and Wissam is most of the time with us in this space, and I really appreciate your words of wisdom and your experience, and also your ability to connect all this to what is happening now. Wissam, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lina, and thank you everyone for this wonderful invite. Lina, again, thank you for your trust in putting me on this panel with these wonderful people and these wonderful activists. And I hope I'll be able to relay a little bit the context in MENA and the context on feminist foreign policies. So I'll reintroduce myself again. My name is Wissam, and I'm, like Lina mentioned, I'm a trans activist from Lebanon. I'm currently residing in Berlin for very obvious reasons of what's happening in the country. I wear many hats and first allow me to preemptively apologize if I take so much space, but I would like to do just a comprehensive overview. I wear two hats. I've been in the community organizing and the trans community for the past 14 years, working on grassroots level, organizing with my community members and queer activists and feminist activist settings. But I also have been heavily involved in international development and donor communities and international organization communities. So I also feel like I have a leverage in looking at policies and looking at processes and structures from a grassroots perspective and a international community perspective. And oftentimes when I hear the term feminist foreign policy, I'm a bit skeptical with this term, specifically because the feminist foreign policies samples that we usually are exposed to in the international community and as civil society are very much global North led. They are molded, they are framed, they are conditioned, they've put in a certain box that doesn't really analyze the positionality and the position of colonialism that these spaces came from. So it's oftentimes parachuted on us and on civil society in a way that in forms of project, in forms of funds, in forms of activities, in form of reporting tools. So it's completely removed from the context and the local context in which we operate in. And it becomes more of a tool of reinforcement of the power dynamics and systemic discrimination and systemic gap that already exists. So when Lina told me that the feminist foreign policy discussion that we will have today is going to be with a representative from Latin America, I was a bit relieved because I just got back from a global trans conference. And the people that I've connected with and the people that I've organized with and the people that I've plotted with and the people that I've found the most common politics and mobilization and community building with are trans people from Latin America and trans people from the feminist movement and grass movement in Latin America. So that gave me a little bit of motivation to take part of this conversation. So as a trans activist and as someone who's been involved in international development, I've been, you can notice recently, the rise of the anti-rights movement in the region and the rise of the anti-gender movement in the region, be it from the backlash that Lebanon is undergoing for the past few years on the queer and the trans community, or the systemic discrimination against and scapegoating these communities, the refugees, and discrimination against migrants. But also, today I found out, Lina, and to add to the list of horrible news, today I found out that the dean of the Lebanese university refused to present a thesis by a sociology student just because it speaks about homosexuality. So the shrinking space of rights in Lebanon is becoming further and further small. It doesn't only stop in Lebanon, it also propagates to other places. In Iraq, right now, it's forbidden to use the term gender in any shape or form. They have further decreased the age of underage marriage, also by the Iraqi parliament, the same in Jordan, the same in Egypt. So the region in itself is a very fertile ground for regressive approaches that we're going through. And I have to say, from somewhat an observation, it's also a way for extremism pushback against feminist foreign policies or policies that are subject from the global north. And that separation between, this is a Western agenda versus we need to preserve our culture, we need to preserve our morals, we need to preserve our communities. In addition to that, and I think that is one of the very problematic things with the global north-led feminist foreign policy or policies led by the global north, and I promise I'll come back, I'll circle back to all of this, is the fact that the constant work on localization and empowering local institutions without factoring in the role local institutions play in imposing systemic oppression and imposing ongoing discrimination. The same governments or the same organizations that fund some women groups or some women rights groups are the same organizations that are funding the ISF or that are funding the security forces or the military or the militarization. Also, not to mention that these global north-led feminist foreign policy are led by governments who are pro-militarization, who are pro-apartheid, who are pro-colonization. So all of these factors together brings back a small question: is how can we as feminist movements, as trans movements, as queer movements in the region, where should we look, or where can we learn, or how can we learn? And knowing, and I'm going to take an example, and I'm going to put Colombia a little bit under the spotlight. In 2016, Colombia led the peace agreement with the armed resistance forces. And I remember reading about this in particular. And I read about this agreement being the most inclusive agreement in history, because first it had a all-women subcommittee that was participating in that agreement. And two, because it was inclusive of women's rights. It was inclusive of women's rights, but also of minority rights, such as the LGBT community. So the bar is there. This is where we can, start the conversation and talk about a South-to-South collaboration. Collaboration that is very much people-centered, rather than political interest-centered. So that's where we can go from there. Talking about foreign diplomacy approach. How can we do that? How can we challenge colonialism and neocolonialism, knowing that we have a very common history as South-to-South conversation in colonialism and violence and wars and conflicts. So that is a very good ground to start with. The second part is, how can we build together an intersectional framework, or how can we learn from the intersectional framework in Latin America that was used in different examples, and how can we contextualize it in our context? And that intersectional diplomatic framework also goes beyond just the movement in itself, but also within the diplomatic relationships. So how can countries like Colombia and Chile and Mexico play a role in these diplomatic relationships with representative of states and governments? The third point that I have is to offer approaches and tools and mutual platforms for learning among different, not only at a higher level or at a diplomatic level, but also at a grassroots level. How can we also create that connection amongst each other? We try our best as movement, but also we need that further push and further motivation from the supporters of these movements and allies of these movements and allies of trans and feminists and queers in our region, to take that further, whether talking about sexual reproductive health and rights, whether talking about economic and social justice, whether talking about community building or movement building. So that's a thing that we can also discuss. And one, I think for me, it's the last point I will mention, I promise, and I will shut up, is the funding scene. And that's what usually tips the scale and the benefits of usually the global north, because that's where the money usually is being put. And that's the biggest influencer, or the biggest contributor to who overpowers in the conversation. And that's unfortunately the funding scene. And I wouldn't say my advice, because I'm not in a place to give an advice, but I think my take on it is that we need a funding that is stemming from a grassroots perspective, that stems from the people, that stems from unconditionality in the funding, that is not agenda-based and is not leaning on agendas or again, foreign interest, but it's leaning on really the service of the community and the support of the community, and that is contextualized within the community. This is what I have. I'm happy to discuss more if needed, but Lina, thank you, and everyone, thank you for giving me the space to talk.
Thank you, Wissam. And I can confirm that the first thing I told Wissam to convince him to get into this conversation is when I said it's a conversation with Latin American countries. Which for him meant that the conversation was serious, I have to say. So thank you very much, Wissam, but thank you also for bringing what, are really what we try to shy away from, the uncomfortable questions, the difficult questions, but I think this is what makes us move forward and progress. And I know what it means for you not to be able to be here, and I know for sure, the challenges, which are not new, I have to say. These have been. So anyway, please know that you're in our hearts, and thank you so much for always being there. And I want to move to somebody else who's not in her home, María Abdeh. Maria is originally from Syria. She is also an amazing activist from Syria. She is the founder of probably what I would say is the first feminist Syrian organization working in Lebanon, Syria, Turkey, and also in diaspora. Maria, the floor is yours. It's very difficult. Your presence is humbling, so it's very difficult to say, to talk on your behalf. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lina. Thank you, Lina. I'm really honored to be here, and thank you for the invitation. And actually, I think I need to say that it wasn't for Lina. I will not be here because I decided to take a step back and rethink about our whole engagement with the international community. So I'm very happy for this conversation to be such serious. So let me first express my solidarity with people in Lebanon, in Palestine, Sudan, Yemen, Iraq movements, but also in my people in Syria, who the people who stayed in Syria, the people in Damascus today who has been also went through the cyber attack, but we will not know what happened in Damascus because we will only have the version of Hezbollah and Iran, unfortunately. So Syria is still ongoing under one of the worst conflicts in the region, and the war. And I have been deciding to take a step back to think about it because, to think how a wonderful revolution who have been led by wonderful men and women 12 years ago started with chanting, with human rights, with dignity, ended up with one of the worst humanitarian situations. There is a lot of self-reflection on it, on Islamization of the conflict, militarizations, but also from a feminist perspective, we have seen the feminist organic movement turning into NGOized, being depending on donor agenda. And that is something that I think we all need to reflect, especially when we are adopting a feminist foreign policy. What it doesn't mean, really. It means to stand in solidarity, to stay connected to the people, to answer the needs of the people, but also their perspective. I have been in so many conferences talking about women's role in peace building, but by the end of the day, at least, I will not say at least, but from my experience, Syrian women were never heard when they were talking about education. We don't want our boys to join armed group. That was 10 years ago. Today, Syrian fighters are all over the place, all over the war, everywhere. In Libya, there is Syrian fighter. In Russia, there is Syrian fighter. They are being recruited by everyone. And the mothers were saying 10 years ago, we want education for our boys. We don't want them to become fighters, but no one listened. In May, actually, I was in Syria. I was on the northeast of the country visiting families. It was my first time in Syria for the last 10 years. And I couldn't make it because I'm a binational. However, with the one thing that really struck me is every person I met there, all of them agreed on one thing, that ISIS is back and ISIS is not defeated. And if we just look about Afghanistan experience, you will see that, no one treated the root causes of the conflict. Same in Syria, the state of terror is still there. The lack of people dignity is still there. The lack of resources for people is still there. So ISIS will be back. And maybe at that time, Syria will become on the agenda again. But until then, it will be abandoned, like Yemen has been abandoned, like Iraq, like other country. And I think it is why we have been so much calling for a feminist foreign policy that looks at the root causes of the conflict, that it is not only about women and girls, it's really understanding violence as continuum, to understand that we need to look at the root causes of any conflict to be able to solve it, to listen and hear women and girls when they are talking about solutions, not about their own rights, they are talking about the whole society. And that is something that we really need to take a real understanding. Otherwise, unfortunately, I'm very much afraid that the feminist foreign policy will be more a continuity of colonialisms rather than a raising of human rights and feminist rights. However, I think there is some good examples that I have witnesses in the last years, what was the emerging of feminist fund and feminist organizing the solidarity movement through the world. And I want to say that I'm very grateful to them. And they were our first responder in the earthquake last year in the northwest of Syria, when in a situation of conflict, when borders are closed, when people are dying under the rubble and no one is supporting them, and we need to wait until there is an agreement between different power to attack. At that moment, the first responders were the feminist donors and feminist policy makers that were really caring about the human and not about the policies. And thanks to them and to our mobilization, we have been able to show examples of how you can respond to I will not say a crisis, to something terrible as an earthquake, but to respond, but also think long-term about the situation of the women who have been through the earthquake, to think about the whole family, to think about the need of people, but also preserving their dignity and understanding their perspective on solutions and how we can empower them so quickly that they became the actor. They came back to their position of actors and not only receivers. And the feminist response to crisis is about responding to the needs and thinking long terms. We have published a paper about it, and I really invite all of you to take a look at it, because it is possible. Because we have been told for so many years that we don't have time to think. Now we need to respond. Now we need to find a solution for ISIS. Now we need to find it. But there is no time for human rights. There is no time for women rights. So I think now it is the time to understand that if we don't address everyone's rights, we will not go anywhere. And that is, for me, the core of a feminist response, but a feminist foreign policy. My second point will be that if we really want to apply a feminist foreign policy, it cannot be separated from domestic policy. We cannot have a feminist foreign policy when the Ministry of Interior in some country are literally chasing migrants, literally chasing refugees. In these countries, unfortunately, today, migrants and refugees are living the same situation of women in our country. They are the most vulnerable. And here we need to understand that as feminists, we have been telling for very long times, women's conditions is not about their sex, it's about the gender, it's about the positionality in community, in society. And so when they are the most vulnerable, in some society, in other society, migrants or refugees would be the most vulnerable. So we need to understand that protection of the most vulnerable is a feminist duty. And the rise of far rights in Europe and elsewhere is a risk for everyone, not only for the feminist movement. It's for the human rights, it's for our future together as a human, it's for the climate. their skepticism around climate change is really worrying. They're coming back to highly militarized solutions is also very worrying. Sometimes I'm getting to the idea that maybe we will witness soon another global war, or I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm maybe very pessimist, but when you look at what is happening in Gaza, when you look about what is happening in our region, said like, and nothing is surprising for us. I think for me, Lina, Wissam, we all know that this is we will arrive here. We will be here because the human rights situation has been going from wars to wars to wars. Social rights, economic rights, all rights have been deprived to people. So I think I will stop here because I don't want to take much time, but I'm really looking forward to the next conference to put the real issue on the core and not only talking and not only addressing what we called, I'm sorry, I love the word. We need to address the core issue, I think, and stop talking only about appearance. We need to go to the core. I think that would be my main message. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria, for making all the connections and also for reminding all of us that not one conflict is in isolation of the next one. I think that's very important. And also for bringing us back to the lived realities and how feminist foreign policies can and should address lived realities. And I think what's worrying is in the midst of what is happening, we are forgetting that ISIS is not defeated, ISIS is back, and back with a vengeance. So thank you for making that. I think that's relevant to all of us, not just to some of us. As I said, our friend and colleague Rafah from Palestine, from Haifa, is not with us, but we will be sharing her statement in the chat, and I will be circling back in the last points that I will be making after we finish the round of inputs in terms of what the next steps are, what we will be sharing with you as suggestion for the next steps. I want to move to Rahel, who is a women, peace and security expert and a women, peace and security expert on the humanitarian compact as well. Rahel, the floor is yours, and I'm really sorry that we're asking you to maybe perhaps take a couple of minutes off because we're already over time. So I'm sorry about this, Rahel.
Sure. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here and stand in solidarity with all of you. Feminist foreign policy and the Women, Peace and Security framework can and must be mutually reinforcing, and this is especially in the domains of security sector reform and sanctions regimes. The conflicts across MENA are becoming intractable. From Palestine, Israel's war with Hamas, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, and Sudan, the wars that we're witnessing are fueled by violent extremism, emboldened nuclear powers, new technological threats, and economic deprivation. To adequately respond, the security sector architecture has to adapt, and the Women, Peace and Security framework must be fully and consistently implemented. Achieving this requires complementarity across policy frameworks, alignment of policy and practice, and accountability for member states. Increasing women's leadership and participation in the military, police, and peacekeeping operations is just one critical element of security sector reform. Women comprise 6.5% of military contingents in UN peacekeeping operations. And out of the 12 that were in place at the beginning of the year, only 8 had gender units and there were only 44 gender advisors, and this is across all mandates. So the UN system-wide gender parity strategy and DPO's strategy for uniform gender parity for 2018 to 2028 call for doubling these numbers. Troop and police contributing countries can advance these goals by reflecting gender parity commitments both in their foreign policies and in their national action plans on WPS. We have to redefine what we mean by security in practice. We have to transform it to a multi-sectoral, intersectional approach to conflict prevention rather than increased militarization, closed borders, and draconian counterterrorism measures such as those that define the post-9/11 era. The conditions that allow violent extremism to thrive can be transformed by prioritizing investments in women-led conflict prevention, resolution, and peace building, women's leadership in politics and democratic electoral processes, and localized gender-inclusive economic development. Our foreign policies must also address the gender dimension of sanctions. So while these can be effective tools in ending impunity for violators of human rights, economic sanctions can block access to trade in foreign markets, causing widespread unemployment, restrict imports on food and medical supplies. The long-term impact of this is especially evident in Iraq, which had the highest maternal mortality rate and one of the highest female poverty rates in the region during its 12 years under US embargo. So feminist policies can require that unilateral sanctions are informed by gender analysis and that they include gender-responsive safeguards. And all member states have to ensure that this is a requirement of UN sanctions regimes and that perpetrators of conflict-related sexual violence are consistently added to sanctions listings. So targeted sanctions and humanitarian exceptions like are being applied in Syria are beneficial, but they're not sufficient. Sanctions policies have to be set through full, meaningful, and equal and safe engagement with women's civil society. And implementation of sanctions has to be assessed according to the pillars of WPS: participation, protection, prevention, relief, and recovery. I want to turn attention briefly to the current crisis in Sudan. According to UN OCHA, 26 million people face acute hunger, 10 million are internally displaced, and at least 2 million have fled into Chad and Libya. UNFPA's Arab States Regional Director describes that temporary shelters designed to hold up to 200 women are now housing up to 2,000. The presence of non-state militia and unchecked flows of small arms and light weapons are directly correlated with the high prevalence of conflict-related sexual violence, and this is now the case in Sudan. Women in shelters report rape, assaults, pregnancies, and severe injuries resulting from these attacks. After more than 500 days of violence, at least 80% of Sudan's healthcare system is destroyed. Darfur is under siege, and incidences of conflict-related sexual violence are increasing. So last week, the Security Council Sanctions Committee renewed its arms embargo on Darfur, but efforts by some member states to extend these embargoes to all of Sudan failed. This in effect leaves an open supply routes to the RSF, which are the paramilitary forces that are fighting the Sudanese government. Meanwhile, a UN report from January presents credible evidence that weapons are being transferred to the rapid support forces from the UAE. The UAE denies these allegations, but the evidence is particularly alarming because they have adopted their first national action plan on WPS in 2021 and have ratified CEDAW among other human rights treaties and global gender equality commitments. All member states, whether they've adopted an FFP or not, have a duty to hold others accountable for transparency, consistency, and adhering to international law. So this is our moment to transform impunity into accountability. This is our moment to ensure that conflict is no longer profitable. We have the frameworks, we have the tools, we have the expertise. By the time we convene in Paris, the current conflicts in MENA will likely be much worse, and we can't afford to wait. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Rahel, for these sobering notes, but also it's reassuring to have somebody like you who understand the mechanisms, who can actually make the linkages. And thank you also for the example on Sudan. Again, something that we keep forgetting, a conflict with humongous consequences, with actually no hope in sight, at least not for the future. I'm going to move straight into the closing remarks. This is a very rich conversation, and it's very difficult to just open for Q&A, at least at this stage. So I'd like us to consider it as a first conversation and bringing all these amazing actors together. I'm going to start with closing remarks, and then I'm going to take 2 minutes in the end for what are the next steps. And one of the things that's important to remember is that this is not the first and last conversation. This is part of a journey. I welcome Ambassador Marcos Correa Letelier, from our Chilean ambassador to Lebanon. And Marcos has just come to Lebanon from Antarctica. And he came just during one of the recent escalations. So it wasn't just a change of scenery, but it was actually, it must have been a scary first few days, Ambassador. So welcome to Lebanon, and welcome to the new normal. I'm happy to have you with us. We've been working closely, collaborating with Chile, who I think adopted their feminist foreign policy exactly a year ago, if I'm not mistaken. So, Marcos, the floor is yours for your remarks.
Thank you, Lina. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you to my colleagues from different parts of the world. And yes, as Lina said, I'm represented Chile in Lebanon. I just came in 3 weeks ago. And the first thing that I would like to do is deliver to you a message from our Vice Minister, Gloria de la Fuente, who is leading the feminist foreign policy, one of the key leaders in foreign policy in Chile already. And yeah, Chile is, as you have mentioned before, Chile is committed with the feminist foreign policy. And our case, in my case, as a Chilean career diplomat, we are committed to implement the feminist foreign policies in every area that we are working. So in that sense, as Lina said before, I was director of the Antarctic Division in Chile. Probably for most of you, or all of you, don't understand what means Antarctica for Chile. Chile is one of the key players in the Antarctica international system. So in that regard, I would try to connect how the Chile is implementing the feminist foreign policy, even in areas that have been historically concentrated in males. So Antarctica historically has very strong gender bias. Since the beginning of the activities in Antarctica, I mean centuries 19 or early 20s, it has been really marked by the presence of male and exclusion of women. Even today, when the most relevant activity in Antarctica is science. So this is why we decided in our division, the division that I was leading, how to carry out the feminist foreign policy in this area. So we decided to act in 3 different levels. The first one was in the multilateral level, as you probably know exactly how we can act. And in this regard, it's important to share with you some information about the Antarctic international system, because this is very separated from the UN system, for instance. And in that regard, so we had two main meetings during the year, and what we're trying to do as Chile is promoting gender issues, supporting initiatives that presented from different countries, co-sponsoring and co-sponsoring initiatives presented by different countries in gender diversity and inclusion. And finally, sharing our own experience, because we are in a process of developing different areas within the big topics that we call it Antarctica. So in bilateral level, we are implementing also, when we sign bilateral agreements, we're trying to introduce paragraphs related to gender issues. And that is, for example, that we have one case, a very particular case with Norway, that we had a negotiation related to Antarctica. And at the end of the conversations, we realized that gender issues were very important for both, for Norway and Chile. And we decided to include, for first time in our bilateral experience, include one paragraph that we are already ready to sign with Norway. So internally, we are working also internally, because Antarctic as a field is leading by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We have an Antarctica, a national institute in Chile, and its dependency is linked to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And within that, we are working also internally. One of the most important part of the work that we are doing with our national institute is how to bring young students, female students, and also scientists to the Antarctica, because the level of participation has been historically very low. And now we are growing. So now we have, for instance, the whole programs that we have related to Antarctica, 44% of the programs are led by scientists, women. So this is really important for us, because as a diplomat, something that we wanted to do is how to connect the theoretical aspect of the women or the feminist foreign policy with the real work that we have done in diplomacy. So this is important for us, and this is why I would like to share the experience with you. And I think this is all from my side. Thank you to Lina. Today has been a very special day here in Beirut. Lina is very brave. There were many explosions in the city today. Thousands of people have been wounded. And Lina is still stand up here with us and carry on this seminar. And I really recognize, Lina, your work, and we are working together in the near future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And as you were speaking, we're still getting news about what has happened today. It seems at the AUB hospital there are additional casualties. And today, maybe it's not sure yet. I'm not sure. At least I don't know. But there may be a closure of schools and institutions. But we will see tomorrow. But this is more and more telling us that we need feminist instruments, and we need instruments that actually acknowledge and challenge toxic masculinity and this kind of violence. Thank you, Ambassador Marcus. I'm really grateful for your comments. And this is probably your first speaking event since you came to Lebanon. So I'm grateful and want to recognize this. The ambassador of Colombia, His Excellency Mr. Edwin Alfonso, is actually in Colombia, but he has sent us a recorded note. And I welcome Sharon and Lina, another Lina from the Colombian embassy in Lebanon. Hi, Sharon. Would you like to share with us the notes? And then I will be asking our dear friend from the Mexican embassy, David, to conclude, and then I will do my closing remarks.
It's a pleasure to be with you today. I would like to express my gratitude for this kind invitation to be part of this forum at the American University of Beirut and allow us to share some of the Colombian experience on gender equality. My name is Edwin Ostos Alfonso. I'm the current ambassador of Colombia to Lebanon. First of all, when we refer about gender equality in Colombia, we need to understand that this has been an historic process where the Constitution of 1991 was extremely important. I would like to refer to about the Article 13, for example. All individuals are born free and equal before the law, shall receive equal protection and treatment from the authorities, and shall enjoy same rights, freedoms, and opportunities without any discrimination on account of gender. During the 90s in Colombia, several groundbreaking laws were made and implemented with different approaches on this matter. For example, Law 18 that was made in 1993. This law was passed to support women, head of household, in charge of her children or people in a condition of disability. After this year and after the article of the Constitution, several programs were made in order to protect and in order also that the women could have these opportunities that before they didn't have it. Now we have special programs in any kind of issues, in different kind of issues. For example, construction and infrastructure, design, clothing, fashion, administrative management, marketing, food processing, etc. It has been a process because in the beginning it was not like this, but thanks to the action that the government has made, now we have a better condition for women in our society. In this slide, I like to refer to about the percent of female heads of household in Colombia. You can see in this slide, for example, that in 1993, the women that were the head of the families in Colombia were only 24.3%. In 2005 was 29.9%, but in 2022, this percent was 44.2%. So the current situation of women in Colombia, it transformed the society, because in the 90s was extremely different than the reality that we have in 2022, in 2024, of course, because the new reality shows that women as head of families has been increasing in a way that we never expected. For example, Law 294 that was made in 1996 was made to prevent, protect, and punish the domestic violence. This law addresses issues on the equality of rights and opportunities for men and women. Furthermore, it orders strict protection from any kind of violence. I need to tell you that this issue is a really important issue for the current government in order to protect women, because internal violence has been, after the COVID-19 also has been a really important issue. So this law was the beginning, because after this law, another laws were made in order to try to protect and give tools to the authorities in order that women could be protected. Law 387 that was made in 1997 This law was created to allow the return of people displaced by the internal conflict in Colombia to their lands. Law 387 pays special attention and prioritizes women, widows, and women who are head of household. In this picture, you can see our current president of Colombia, the President Gustavo Petro, giving and returning their lands to women that before they had the land and because the internal conflict, they lost the house where they used to live and now return to their hands thanks to the current government of Colombia. Once again, I would like to express as ambassador of Colombia to Lebanon my appreciation to all of you for bringing this important topic to Lebanon. Additionally, I would like to share that this is not the first time that the Colombian Embassy in Lebanon participates in this matter. Last year, we had the opportunity to bring the experience of the Chacana and Manifiestas companies that employ women ex-combatants from the conflict. So we hope that in the next year, if we have another opportunity with you, we can bring experiences for women in Colombia that has been working with the current situation, and you can not only know about how has been improving in our society, but at the same time, if there are some experiences that are really useful for the Lebanese society, we would like to share. So thank you again, and thank you for all of you for listening this short presentation.
Thank you so much, and I'm grateful for His Excellency and also for Lina and Sharon for being with us. And I want to just point out to something because it relates directly to feminist foreign policy, and it relates directly to the experience of Lebanon and to something that I've been discussing with our young colleagues at the Colombian Embassy, which is the experience with the disappeared of the war and transitional justice and the ways in which countries such as Lebanon and Syria, which is at a larger scale, must address the issue of the forced disappear. So thank you so much. Lina, I won't be able to give you the floor. I want to close with our dearest friend, David. And I must say, this whole engagement with feminist foreign policy really started with our good friends at the Mexican Embassy in Lebanon, the first Latin American country to have signed off the for a feminist foreign policy. David, the floor is yours for the last closing remarks, and then I'll take over. You're muted. You're muted.
I'm so sorry. Thank you so much, Lina. And I would also like to express my condolences and concern for the latest developments here in Beirut. Excellencies, ambassadors of Colombia, Chile, and Mexico, dear colleagues of the Asfari Institute, INMUJERES, and the Center for Gender Studies at the Colegio de México. As our distinguished panelists delve into Mexico's feminist foreign policy, today I would like to highlight two initiatives at the heart of Mexico's commitments towards the full realization of human rights and address structural barriers maintaining gender-based discrimination: the Safe Zone and the Comprehensive Assistance Window for Women in our consular services and in our consular network. The Safe Zone is an initiative led by Mexico's Institute of Mexicans Abroad and the General Directorate of Protection of Mexicans Abroad of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, aimed at providing critical support and consular protection services that are sensitive to gender, gender identity, sexual orientation, among other factors. This initiative is very relevant for LGBTIQ+ communities and women and girls that are vulnerable in certain areas and contexts. The original objective of the Safe Zone was to promote a safe space, free of discrimination within the representations of Mexico in the world, so that all people can attend to carry out their consular procedures and access services at the community windows with the certainty of having respectful, dignified, friendly, a cordial attention from the staff. Although the safe zone started to operate in our embassy and consular offices in the US in 2017, since 2021, Mexico's entire consular network offers inclusive services to all Mexicans. The safe zone is not just a statement. It is a commitment to the LGBTIQ+ migrant persons and their families, so that they know that they are not alone, that they should not be afraid, that representations of Mexico abroad will be there to assist them and meet their needs. In order to improve the safe zone, our embassies continuously engage with local associations and strategic partners to better assist our nationals so that they may have access to shelters against gender violence, have access to legal counseling and representation, among other services. This process is, of course, ongoing, and we rely on both members of our Mexican community abroad and local partners. However, some landmark consular services enabled in the safe zone are obtaining birth certificates with gender reassignment through administrative procedures at the embassy for members of the trans community. In 2022, also, a protocol was issued for birth certificates for gender identity recognition, ensuring the human right to identity as recognized by Mexico's constitution. Trans people, especially trans women, have traditionally faced compounded discrimination and violence based not only on gender identity, but race, nationality, immigration status, language, and economic position. The detention of trans immigrants and their vulnerability to trafficking are serious concerns noted by the United Nations and the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. Since 2022, gender identity in Mexico is recognized as a personal conviction that may not correspond to the sex on the original birth certificate, allowing for birth certificates to be issued at consular offices without age, gender, or residence restrictions. Simple procedures for Mexican trans people abroad to access identity documents are crucial to combating discrimination and violence. Moreover, since the year 22, the Mexican Civil Code was reformed to eliminate the definition of marriage as a union between a man and a woman, legalizing equalitarian marriage in all 32 states. Mexican same-sex couples can therefore marry in Mexico's embassies and consular offices, demonstrating Mexico's commitment to respecting and protecting constitutional rights and freedoms for all Mexican people worldwide. In the case of eradicating violence against women, the safe zone relies on a consular protocol for the attention of cases of violence. In 2022, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and UN Women jointly developed the project Consular Care Protocol for Victims of Gender-Based Violence in order to have an instrument to strengthen the actions of consular staff, ensure the rights of the target population, and comply with national and international obligations of the Mexican state regarding equality and non-discrimination. The objective of this protocol is to provide consular personnel with a tool that helps them in the task of guaranteeing comprehensive care for migrant women and girls who are victims of gender-based violence. It involves a new model of consular protection that seeks to provide specialized care by identifying specific needs of the population we serve. Likewise, it aims to serve as a useful instrument for detecting possible violence faced by migrant women and girls in a preventive way. In addition to the safe zone and the consular attention protocol for victims of gender violence, since 2016, our ministry counts on the Comprehensive Assistance Window for Women, better known as VIME in Mexico. The VIME seeks to actively and permanently promote the package of consular services available to Mexican women in order to contribute to their personal, family, economic, and social empowerment, considering their particular circumstances and, if applicable, special situations of vulnerability. The VIME is a transversal concept that communicates all the services offered by the consular representations of Mexico from a gender perspective. VIME puts women and not processes at the center of actions and public policies. It recognizes women as subjects of rights and agents of change through committed participation. This innovative approach also relies on local associations, groups, and institutions that can facilitate consular guidance and services on topics such as legal counseling, education, health and psychology, job boards and business incubators, financial guidance, and artistic development. One key aspect covered by the VIME is the diagnosis of the conditions of vulnerability that girls and women face, including factors such as security, education, health, employment, and economic situation. Local associations specialized in providing services under the VIME are identified by our consular network to explore opportunities for collaboration, including the signing of memorandum of understanding with hospitals, health clinics, temporary shelters, and organizations that offer legal advice and representation and emotional and psychological support, among other services. To conclude, I'd like to highlight that the Safe Zone initiative is a particularly significant initiative in light of the recent developments in the Middle East and at the global level, where a backlash against LGBTIQ+ and women's rights has underscored the urgent need for safe spaces and gender and LGBTIQ+ sensitive consular services. In such contexts, safe zones not only offer immediate protection, but also symbolize global solidarity and a commitment to human rights. Let us continue to champion these efforts, ensuring that our global policies and domestic practices align in the pursuit of a fairer foreign policy and consular protection. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. And I just want to highlight a couple of important things that David has said. The examples that he has given are examples that we have witnessed, and I have to say that the Mexican embassy in Lebanon, in the midst of backlash against LGBTQI community, which basically meant also not just hate speech, but calls for physical elimination of queer folks in Lebanon, offered its space not only for Mexicans, but actually for anybody facing this kind of direct threat in Lebanon. So I thank you for highlighting this. Something happened with my, sorry. So I thank you for highlighting this, and I also for highlighting the alignment between internal policies and external and foreign policies, and how it doesn't work for one of them to be feminist and the other. So basically challenging the existing schizophrenia in some of these policies. And again, I want to remind everybody that that's how we started as AUB in working on feminist foreign policy, and it was with Latin American countries, but particularly starting with Mexico. Thank you so much. I'm going to close this conversation, and I'm very sorry that it's happened. I'm sorry that it's happening in unusual circumstances. Now it's been confirmed that tomorrow educational institutions and public institutions will be closed. We've just received the communique, the official communique. Again, thank you for all your support and all your solidarity. We really do not know how this will unfold. It's a very unusual and strange form of escalation, and it's a testament to brutal, hegemonic, violent masculinity and militarization. So it's right on point. I mean, anyway, so in terms of follow-up, let me just clarify, let me just share with you a few things. We will be sharing with everybody. We've had something like 69 attendants, other than the speakers and the panelists. We will be sharing with everyone the recording of this session because that's our main archive for the conversation. We will be sharing the presentations, and if the Colombian ambassador allows us, we will also share the recording. We will also share the key documents coming out of the Mexico conference, so mainly the declaration, the recommendations. We're trying to make summaries of these available in Arabic also for wider use and dissemination. I'm really sorry. Some of the paper, we're trying to put together some also additional relevant documentation on feminist foreign policy available. We will definitely include Maria, the document from Women Now, and also anything produced by the Feminist Foreign Policy Collaborative that we are part of. In collaboration with many of our partners, we'll be working towards the Commission for the Status on Women, the 69th edition, which will be around Beijing plus 30. And looking at the feminist foreign policy as part of this iteration is going to be an important part of it. So, and we will continue the preparation, the joint collaboration, the joint planning with our partners, our co-organizers, leading to our next convening and our next event related to feminist foreign policy. So in closing, Ximena, Sandra, and Ambassador Graciela, thank you ever so much. Your support, and I'm sorry, Ana Maria Colmex, thank you ever so much for this amazing South collaboration. We will be continuing. We will circle back to you, and we will come back to you to organize the next steps together. And thank you for your, not just your collaboration, but also for your solidarity. Maria, Wissam, Rahel, and in absentia, Rafa, thank you for being with us and for grounding this discussion, for making it, relevant to what is happening in the field, and for all your contributions. The ambassadors from Mexico, Colombia, and Chile, thank you also for supporting this process and for bringing it at the level of what does it mean for representation missions. Not just myself, but all of us at the Asfari Institute, we can do great stalking. So we will be stalking you for the next steps. I think, as I said, we are in this together, and we would like to continue this work. We say in Arabic, when you look at what you're going to do next, it always begins by saying, if we're still alive. If we're still alive, if we're still alive, we are continuing this, not just the conversation, but the next steps in the process together. So thank you all, the participants, and essentially all of you, all the co-organizers. Thank you for this collaboration. What do you say in Spanish? Hasta what?
Hasta mañana.
Hasta mañana.
Hasta
Hasta
mañana.
luego.
Hasta luego.
And take care, and lovely, really, really wonderful having you with us as partners, but also in feminist solidarity. Take care, and bye-bye.
Bye. Best wishes, Lina.
Bye.
Thank you
Bye.
all.
Thank you, Lina.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.